Let's see if I can do it.
Hi, good evening to you. This is ESTV. I'm Alan Hennessy, and you're very welcome to tonight's show. On tonight's show, we're going to be talking about typography, and we're also going to be talking about knowing for yourself and evaluating critical information. I'm joined in the studio tonight by Howard Hughes and also by Trevor Lorking. How are you, Trevor? How are you tonight?
Good evening, guys. Yeah, having a good night tonight. We've had a busy day, but glad to get here so we can all have a good chat and help make people effective in their social media. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And I see we've got Howard here tonight. How you doing tonight, Howard?
Trevor, yeah, I'm doing fantastic, thank you. I can't believe it's a week since I was in Bank of Ireland doing my talk on entrepreneurial thinking, or cultivating the entrepreneurial mindset. Great feedback from that. Big thanks to Alan Hennessy, who assisted me there with that and gave me a great introduction. Meaning I came onto the floor with tremendous applause. So thank you very much
Excellent.
for that, Alan, and very good feedback at the end.
No problem, Howard, there. You're very welcome. It was a great night as well, actually. Just to let you know, guys, what is Effectifying Social? Well, Effectifying Social is the act and the process of making something effective. And then obviously social means interacting with your community. And the reason why we came together, the three guys training, which is, of course, myself, Alan Hennessy from Compass Media, Trevor Lorkins from The Digital Alchemist, and Howard Hughes from Howard Hughes International, is that we've seen that there is so much information out there online, and it can be time consuming trying to read through it and understand it, and it's time you do not have in your day. So the other side of that is what is relevant to you, and to help you find out that information, we have come together because we are all, well, I use the word very, very slightly, but we are experts in our field. We all have proven track records in our own respective businesses. So as I said, tonight we are going to be talking about knowing for yourself and evaluating critical information. And also we're going to be talking tonight about typography and picking the right fonts for your business. So I know, Trevor, you have studied quite a lot about typography. So we might start with yourself and you might tell us a little bit more. And the first question I would ask you is what's the difference between a typeface and a font? Maybe you could explain that to us.
A very good common question, I think. I think you have to wind back to the good old days of what typography actually was. If you go back, I don't know whether your memory's as good as mine or whether you're as old as me, but anyway, probably not far off. When you had the little metal blocks years ago where they make actually printing presses, and that was what type was. And a typeface, you would say, really is a certain style of the characters, makes up the overall look and feel of it, whereas the fonts is the individual set of a typeface. So if you say took one of the modern fonts nowadays, Open Sans, you probably come across it quite a lot on the internet on websites. Open Sans is the typeface, But within that, you would have, say, Open Sans Light, Open Sans Condensed, Open Sans Bold, Open Sans Bold Italic. They're all fonts. So if you took your kind of music radio days, you would say a typeface is the album, the fonts are the songs that make up that album.
Very good, very good.
If that makes sense, yeah?
It does.
So would you have, like, could you have, let's say, a font family, as it were, Trevor?
Yeah, a font family is a typeface as such. It's all the fonts that make up that overall characteristic of what the typeface or the font family is. So the font family of the Open Sans Bold, Open Sans Condensed, they're all the fonts, and the family is the typeface, Open Sans. So another common one, Times Roman, you got Times Roman Bold, Times Roman Italic. They're all the fonts that make up that typeface. So
and I suppose there's so many different type, fonts and also typefaces out there. How would you best, I suppose, go about picking the right one for your business? Or could you give us any sort of ideas or hints of what's the best?
This is the black art, isn't it? I've been fascinated by fonts back in the good old days, in the old Letraset books, back in sort of the 80s, if you remember that many years ago. And you'd have printed books of all the different typefaces, and you could buy them as rub down letters on transfer sheets. None of this technology, digital things that make life really easy now. And I was fascinated with these books. I just left school and started work, and I was fascinated by these pages and pages of all these different typefaces. And it's just everyone tells a different story. And I don't think there's any really sort of right or wrong of getting the font to be your brand. It's just having that knack of knowing which is going to be the best. Clearly, if you're designing, say, a funeral director's business card or a children's birthday party invite, I think most people would see there would be two distinct different fonts there, and you wouldn't want a fun comical font on a funeral director's business card, I doubt, unless you're a fun happy funeral director. But that's the sort of thing. I know, Howard, you've just recently come up with your new logo for your Howard Hughes International, and the font you picked there is a very dependable, strong, has solidity, the font you picked. You wouldn't want Comic Sans to be fun, hip and happening and trendy in a sort of the childish kind of way, because it wouldn't fit your business model. Yeah?
It wouldn't fit the image I was projecting, and thank you for leading on to that, because I had originally, when I had envisaged it, it was just, they were straight pillars. They didn't have any of the flourishes top and bottom. And for me, it wasn't cohesive and it wasn't happening. And thanks to you, you said something. You said try a serif font.
I think the other bit you can touch on is this thing people sort of say is serifs and sans serifs. People talk about them. The serifs are the curly little bits on the edge of the fonts. So things like a Times Roman have those little curly bits. If you know most people generally know Times Roman is a very common font. Whereas the sans serif, sans is French as without, is the more straight line fonts without the curly bits. They are the two sort of distinct groups, if you like. And in your font, the serifs on that just gives out that slightly extra edge, a bit more classic, a bit more traditional. It's probably in my world, being a design-led kind of business, I don't want the serifs. I want the cleaner, more contemporary look, if you like. So, it's an interesting thing looking at all the different fonts, and there are thousands of them. And picking that right one can be a bit of a challenge at times. And I think a lot of people probably don't even bother. They go to their design package, they start typing the name, and a font will appear because there'll be a default font. And they think, well, that'll do. It's just a font, stick it on, send it out. And they don't go to the trouble of looking at all the different fonts out there that you could have. And there are thousands. It's a bit of a minefield at times.
And is it a case that never the twain shall meet, or are there crossovers, a mixture between sans and a mixture between serif?
Yeah, there's a lot of debate on sort of font pairing, if you like. So mixing and matching the two, and that delves even deeper into marrying up the two different fonts to make up your brand, if you like. I think it's getting people to think there are fonts out there. There is more than just Times Roman, Comic Sans, and Arial. Experiment. You'll probably know when it's really wrong. Like I say, Comic Sans for a funeral director is probably wrong, but you'll get a better feel for what you like, and if you like it, go with it. My brand has changed over the last 20 odd plus years. and it's changed with how my business has changed. But the one thing I have done is when I picked a font or a pair, I stick with them. But everything I put out, I stick with those fonts. I don't mix and match and suddenly change it one day to something different, because once I've created that visual of that font that goes with my brand, I stick with it. So keep that consistency throughout, really.
Yeah, and I suppose that also works then, you know, and a lot of what we do at the moment is obviously very visual, and obviously a font is very visual. And we you know, we do talk a lot about digital here, but the other side of that, which I always sort of think about as well, if anyone comes and was talking to me about a particular, you know, design that they're going to use, I'm saying, okay, does this marry up with your print media? So for instance, if for instance you have, you know, you decide that tomorrow you have this great business and you have this great fonts and you have all these fantastic, you know, designs and whatever, and that's great and it's online. What if you were doing an exhibition and you had to create that big sign? Will that transfer onto a printed billboard? And you know, I think, I don't know, I presume, Trevor, you would also take that into account as well when you'd be designing a particular brand, a logo, or whether it be a typeface.
Yeah, I mean, very, very much so. It's thinking beyond, you know, the initial inquiry comes to, I'm going to start my business, I'm looking for a refresh, I need some business cards. You know, business cards is a great starting point for a lot of people. That gets them going. And inherently, business cards are a very small document. You know, they can fit in your pocket, don't they? And you have to reflect to think, well, yeah, you might want to advertise on the back of a bus, you might want a big billboard on the side of a building. Will it translate? It's probably the other way around, that you can get some intricate fonts that work big at large scale, but when you shrink them right down to say 8 points to have your address on the bottom of your business card, it's illegible and you can't read it because it's too detailed. So it's certainly a consideration. Think beyond the, I just need a business card, I just need a poster, into how that's going to work across all of your media. And that's what we do. You know, we look at all of that and we think, well, where's your business going to be? You never know quite maybe where you want to be in exactly 5 years' time, but there's a good view of, well, where are you now? Let's look at where it needs to go. What is going to work? And pick a font that's going to do the job across all your media, across all your printing, and will work effectively on a business card and a big billboard. You know, because once you've got it, if you suddenly go, oh, I need it for this and it doesn't work, what are you going to do? Start again? Refresh your brand? You know,
you're really back to square one as well. And then you also see then sometimes, and I've seen it myself, and you know, and I've often commented on it, is, you know, when it comes to branding like that, and I know we're sort of maybe slightly getting off the subject, but when it comes to branding, it's, you know, it's all about that perception and that seeing, you know, letting your business be seen. And if you can have it a good design and, you know, strong fonts for whatever the business you are in, it's imperative. It really is a big part of it. And I believe that, you know, when you're designing, when you're designing your, you know, when you have this idea in your head, you know, don't try and do this yourself. Go to people who know and understand what it's all about, because that's where your brand will stand out, as opposed to, you know, someone sitting at a computer with Photoshop and saying, oh, I'll use that font and I'll write in this font, and having a number of different fonts that probably don't gel together.
Very much so.
Looks like a dog's dinner.
I mean, I always say to people, you know, pair of scissors, do you know what to do with a pair of scissors? You can cut things with a pair of scissors, don't you? And this is very apt. And they go, yeah, I use scissors. I said, but do you cut your own hair? And they look at me, of course I don't cut my own hair, I go to a hairdresser's. I said, well, when it comes to branding, why do you do it yourself? And I saw a great example last year of some fabulous video content that was out. And it's really filmed well, they got the lighting right, they got the scripts right, looked really slick. But then at the end of it, they did some captions over the top, and they got the wrong font, it was too big, the wrong colour, it just looked a mess. So all that work they'd gone into getting the video production right, and as we know, producing video with a proper studio and lighting and cameras is a lot of work. That was brilliant. And then the last minute, I'll just stick some text on the top, save it, that'll do. And it looked a complete mess, and it made you look very amateurish, because they hadn't thought about the branding and the design, and the font they picked didn't match the brand, didn't match anything. It was literally default font, text on top, that'll do. And it destroyed it. And it's a real shame that if they'd have put some thought into that, or got somebody that knew about typography, it would have lifted that video even more. and it would have been far more successful than probably what they put out. So a lot to think about.
And it's interesting that you should mention that. I'm reading a book at the moment by a guy called Dan Kahneman, or Dan Kahneman, and he's a psychologist. He's the only psychologist to win the Nobel Economics Prize for his work done on that. But what at the moment, the piece I'm reading at the moment is how the very last piece can actually influence everything that's gone before. So let's say I stayed in this beautiful hotel and had a lovely time, staff were lovely, everything, and then I'm going to check out and they start messing me around, or something happens, or there's a blatant error in the bill or something like that. That will actually tarnish everything that's come before. It's amazing. So and of course the other thing we were talking about there is the overlap between branding and typeface and consistent and marketing and all that kind of stuff. And I think that illustrates nicely why the three of us have come together, because we're not one person trying to be experts in all fields. We're experts in our individual fields, but overlapping that image and brand.
And it becomes a collaboration where we all have pieces of the puzzle that if we were to go and do this ourselves, we would be having to say, okay, well, hold on, let's talk to this guy. I know this guy, or this, you know what I mean, and referring, and then people aren't getting. You have to, for that customer and for that client or whatever, they will have to start again at the beginning and say, okay, well, so I've talked to Alan about X, Y, and Z, and now I have to talk to Trevor about this exactly the same thing. So you're wasting your time, wasting time as much as ever. But I think the key takeaway points from what Trevor and what you're saying there is to stick with one font and stick with one type of and think about it before you actually go and put pen to paper, and understand and say, will this convert, or will this evolve over time? Can I build this? Can I build this into a bigger marketing plan, and to have it right from the start, and speak to a professional. So that's some sound and some fantastic advice there, Trevor. And I'm sure over the next couple of weeks we're going to be talking about that in more detail, and other subjects around design as well. You're with ESTV here tonight, and if you do want to get in contact with us, you can tweet us at Effectifying SOC. That's Effectifying SOC. You can also find us on Facebook at Effectifying Social, and we're also on Instagram at Effectifying Social. And you can subscribe, of course, to our YouTube channel, which is Effectifying Social. And if all else fails, you can have a look at our website, which is effectifying.social. So there's loads of ways to get in contact with us. We'd be delighted for any of your comments or suggestions for the show. We're always looking to bring you more. And we're also now going to just talk to Howard. Howard Hughes from Howard Hughes International. He's a business coach and also a life coach as well. If I'm right in saying that, Howard.
That's right, yeah.
Tonight what we're going to be talking to Howard about is knowing for yourself, and critically evaluating information around your business, even around your own personal life. And hopefully you're going to get some real good tips and some insight with Howard. So Howard, tell us a little bit more about knowing for yourself.
Well, thanks very much, Alan. Good evening, and good evening, Trevor.
Good evening.
The know for yourself is it was a phrase that hung above the door of the Oracle of Delphi. And just to dip deeply or briefly into this, the Oracle of Delphi is where the rulers of Athens would go and seek advice from these mystical beings. But as a caveat, as a kind of get out clause, what they said was, look, whatever you hear, know for yourself. It's either know for yourself or know thyself. And basically, what that means is critical evaluation. Whatever I tell you is not necessarily what you're going to hear. It's how you're going to filter it, how you're going to process it. So I could say something what I would find completely inoffensive, and you'd find you'd take offense to it, simply because of the filters that you have created in yourself. So knowing for yourself is about taking information and critically evaluating it, becoming impersonal from that, looking at it as a piece of information, because information is communication. It's about conveying a message. It's about me letting you know that I'm going to be here, or it's about me letting you know my point of view. However, that doesn't make it a fact. There's a great example of a woman who goes to an optician's, and she says, I need a pair of glasses. And the optician just takes off his glasses and goes, there you go, there's a pair of glasses for you. And like, it's correct. She looked for a pair of glasses and she got it, but she couldn't use them because what she saw and her eyes were different. So when we're given information, the same information can be used for different purposes, let's say. So knowing for yourself is a great way to detach. When we process information, there is a 1/10,000th of a second gap between us taking the information in and us processing it. And that's known as our response ability, our ability to respond correctly to information. Now, if you think that from the day we were born, we're always fed information. We're given information, we're potty trained, we're taught how to use the cutlery, we're taught how to eat, we go to school, we're taught the planets, we're taught there's a lot of superfluous knowledge that we were given, certainly of our generation, and then we go to primary, and then we go to, and it keeps going, and here's the information, and you just digest it, and you accept it as true. Even from your parents, you accept it as true. You don't question it. And then you go to college, and then you go to work, and you accept it as true because this is the way it's always done. So it's very difficult. Society doesn't really support the individual. It doesn't really support the person who asks questions and stops and goes, well, why is that? Why is that so? And so, either through kind of laziness or through fear, we stop critically evaluating the information that comes into us. Whether it's from the news or whether it's from soap operas.
Well, I even have come to have the classic one when I say to people, well, no one's proved to me 2 + 2 is 4 yet. We accept it, like you say, you go to school and somebody in front of your class says 2 + 2 is 4, and when you're 5 years old you go, oh, okay then, I'll go along with that. And it's probably quite handy if you all go along with it because it makes the world to work. But no one actually sits down and goes, well, hang on a sec, are you sure it's 4? And that's just a little example that people think, oh yeah, good point. Well, what if it's not 4? Well,
yeah.
How long have we got?
Yeah. And a lot of us run on formulae that we were handed by well-intentioned people that we haven't questioned. It's there's depression rates are up 10 times since the 1960s.
But I think also, sorry, Howard.
No, go ahead, Alan.
I also think that goes, a lot. Okay, the way, as you say, our minds are trained from a very young age. This is the way, you should think. This is the way you should go, whatever. So when it comes to business, a lot of businesses will actually take that and say, well, no, this is how this company done it. This is how this company done it. This is how they achieved success. There is a whole plethora of other pieces to that jigsaw that business that is being successful has done in that, which they have sat back, they have taken in the information, they've researched it, they find it. So with regards to knowing for yourself, I think you need to do that and step outside and stand back from it and really understand and say, does this work for me, or is this the right path that I should be going? And I think that is it's a huge part of business today. I heard a story the other week, and someone said to me that if everyone is going to the right, why don't you sometimes even look at the left side?
Yeah. Well, I actually have the theory that I always do a lot of my thinking inside the box. Everybody goes, well, what? No, you've got to think outside the box. They're going to know.
Yeah.
Just be quiet, be calm, shut out the noise, go inside your box, where it's very calm and peaceful, and you can actually let thoughts come in and be creative with your thoughts, and generate lots of different ideas and go left instead of right. But if you're outside the box with everybody else, it's far too noisy, and you just get dragged along with the mass noise, don't you?
That's it. And I mean, the very definition of thinking outside the box, you have to define what the box is first. You can't just go, let's think outside the box. And you're like, what box? Yeah. Where's the box? Let's define the box before we do that. And that's it. And it's very important, because what it also engenders then, well, number one, 3 questions. Where's the information coming from? How does it serve them and me? And what can I do with it? 3 very simple questions. And as you get the hang of it, when you're looking at somebody and they're telling you something, and you've got this filtration process, and you're looking at them going, okay, who are you? What are you telling me? How's it going to serve you? How's it going to serve me? And what can I do with it? It becomes instantaneous then, because it's ability then to see the subliminal. As people start talking and giving it all this, you start to be able to process the information that they're giving to you. You're able to process and critically evaluate what it is they're saying. So are these people genuine, or are these people shysters? And it's, as I said, it's very important to know for yourself, especially in business. If somebody gives you information, you've got to detach from it. You've got to, somebody said, you don't ask an insurance salesman for insurance or about insurance. If you are in want, or if you're in dire want, or if you're in dire need, and somebody comes along with a proposed solution to your problem, your dire need is going to be your worst obstacle to critical evaluation. And that's, again, just for example, a lot of these letters that go out, you know, the email letters from the princes and all that kind of stuff with 10,000, they're still going out because they work, because there's people in need who are not critically evaluating web address, email addresses, all that kind of stuff.
There's a classic quote in my purchasing days. I spent 20 years in purchasing, spending lots of money, and one of the classic quotes is, necessity never made a good buyer.
Brilliant. And that's absolutely true. Brilliant. It's brilliant.
Exactly.
Well, that's all I got for tonight.
That's fantastic, Howard. And like, as you said, like, you know, I've seen some of the posts and the videos that you've put up on your own personal business pages, you know, in regards to Facebook, and some of them are actually, you know, there's some very, very valid information, very, you know, and very insightful information, and it's well worth, you know, thinking about it and looking at, you know, what you're actually doing, and, you know, evaluating it and making sure that it is working, and or that it is going to work, I suppose, is the other side of that, you know. And the other, what I would say to you is, you know, there's definitely room there. And as I said, over the next coming weeks, we will be talking more in depth about, you know, the coaching and the mentoring side of business and the understanding. And I think that's vitally important, because they're all major parts to building a business and actually building your own personal brand, or, you know, even taking away from business, of, you know, changing the way you look and changing the way you think about things going forward, because it really does. And I've past experience from speaking to coaches, and also understanding and taking a different viewpoint of what business is, you know, what you can do. And it's, as you say, if you sit back and you start looking at it, you'd be amazed at the amount of opportunities that you can avail of, and the value that you'll get from it as well.
I think what Howard's saying there is great, and it's really appropriate, I think, now. And, you know, digital media now is flooding us with information, isn't it? You know, every feed is with pages and pages of content. And I saw something the other day, somebody put a post out, quite a well-respected person on Facebook, and they put something out like saying 67% of marketeers predict X, Y, and Z. And you stop back and you think, well, how have they worked out 67%? How have they actually done that? Have they asked every marketeer in the world and added it all up and worked it out? Let alone the predictions that let's face it, predictions aren't true. They're predictions. They can't be true because nobody knows. But the fact they quoted 67%, it was just like, well, I just took that and thought, well, I'm not going to read it, because there was no, it wasn't like, well, we asked 60%, 67% of marketeers who worked in this company, or there was nothing to back that information up. And I think it's very valid nowadays. There is so much content and you flick past so quick, how you filter out what is valid, what is real. And I don't know whether you have a view on that, Alan, of, you know, putting all this content out, how you should manage putting it out, how you should evaluate it, even your own content, you know, how people respond to it, how that could work better for people.
Yeah, well, see, look, you know, at the end of the day, when you do look at, and you look at your content that you are, you know, putting out there, and, you know, it may be of value that you think that you're giving to people, but the other side of that is I would always say to any clients is, you know, you need to think about it from the perspective of the customer. And the easiest way to do that is probably to actually say, okay, well, would I read this? Would this interest me? And if it does, then then you're on the road to success. You know what I mean? Sometimes you may be wrong, or sometimes you're not. But the other side of that is then you have to think about, you know, how can I use this on different levels, on different types of platforms? How can I repurpose the content? To get to that stage, you need to see what is working and what is not working. And, you know, I'm a firm believer in trying to figure out and trying to understand, especially when it comes to digital marketing and to social media marketing. You know, it's vitally important to understand what works, because you're only wasting your time otherwise. You could be sitting there for 10 hours or 12 hours a day putting out stuff and putting out content that actually is of no benefit to anybody, and you're not going to get any results from it. So, you know, where I always say is, if you have good content and you've put that information out there, you know, look at your analytics and look at what people are actually looking at. And, you know, you can see then, you can very, very quickly distinguish what's good and what's bad. So there's a huge amount of information on all of the social media networks and platforms, I should say. You know, look at your insights from Facebook. You know, look at what content you've pushed out and say, okay, well, that got great engagement and that got a good reach. So people seem to think, people like that. So that's fantastic. But then I got another one that had very, very little engagement and very, very little reach. So you sort of say, well, I don't really need to use that. Plus, as well, you're also saving yourself time, because what you can do is you can repurpose that content on a different platform. So, for instance, if we have a Facebook post, say we have this video here tonight, and we put this out on Facebook, and it goes out, and it's fantastic, and people watch it. You know, there's no reason why we can't put this also on YouTube, and then repurpose it on Twitter.
All right.
So, like, actually, you know, spread this to reach different types of audiences. But each platform has its own language, as we all know, and we all understand that. You know, you can write 2,000 words in Facebook, but you can only write 140 characters in Twitter. Yep. So you've got to, when you're repurposing your content, you've got to think, you know, of the platforms that you're going to go on, and what may work when in one tone of language on one platform may not necessarily work on another one. You know, it's like when we post content to LinkedIn. LinkedIn is basically, and it's a good friend of mine uses the analogy, and I think it's very true, is it's like if LinkedIn is Facebook with a tie. And that's what it is. But it's business to business, guys. And we need to remember that. You know, I've been looking at a few blogs over the last few weeks, and I've noticed that there's a few blogs that are saying now that LinkedIn is starting to become a little bit more familiar, and people are starting to post selfies on it. You know, in all, I think it's still people go and business people use LinkedIn as that platform. So it's more direct. So if you think about Facebook is nice and it's friendly.
Yeah.
Twitter, it's fast and it's furious. Okay, LinkedIn, it's business. People are on there to find out information and find it out quickly, and trying to, sift through what other platforms are sort of making it nice and fluffy.
Yeah.
So they want the correct information.
So really, what we're saying with the content, I think some people get a bit confused on repurposing, and you see a lot of people they got their post, they think, right, this is what I've got to say, I've got to be a picture with the right typeface on it, and I'm going to send it, and it automates it. You can put one post and it'll put it out on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and here and there, and just that's it, done, finished. That's not repurposing, is it? That's just banging out all your content all together in one go.
Yeah, and the other side of that is a lot of people that would be even on the types of, say, Twitter, and if, as you say, Trevor, you just put it out into whether it is a scheduling tool that you have, and you say, oh well, I'm going to put that on Facebook, I'm going to put it on Twitter, I'm going to put it on wherever. If you share something from Facebook on Twitter, it comes up with the FB. Now, 9 times out of 10, people actually do not. They do not. I know I personally don't, and I know a lot of businesses won't even look at something if the link is from Facebook, because what way I see that is if people haven't had enough time to just go and just to do this correctly, are they going to help me in my business? And it puts a doubt in your mind as well. But as you say, if you're using different types of platforms, with regards to, even as you say, Trevor, graphics and stuff like that, one size for Facebook on a graphic is not the same size for Twitter or Instagram or wherever it may be. You know what I mean? They're all different sizes, so really do think about that as well. But repurposing the content, you can find out all this information, Facebook Insights. You have Twitter Analytics. Even on Instagram now, I know on particular posts, if you actually click into a particular post, I think that's what they call it. It is what they call it. You can actually see the insights for that post and how many people reached and what the engagement was. So that's another good thing. There also are third-party tools out there to help you for Instagram, like the types of, say, Simply Measured or Iconic Square. They're great for getting details and getting the metrics on, the information that's on your post. And of course, Google Analytics, because at the end of the day, everything that you're posting on social media should really direct back to your website, because that's where you will make the sales. So if you think about your social media as a way of telling people, but getting that conversion should be from your website.
Great tip.
And also to have your website evaluated. There's no point in directing lots of traffic to a
very true
to a website that is is unattractive, let's say, to make an understatement, with too many bells, whistles, and all that kind of stuff. And I think, Trevor, your experience. I mean, how long have you been working on websites now?
My classic tagline used to be web design since 1999. That rolled off the tongue quite nicely. But the world's moved on to not just doing websites. I mean, in '99, when I started doing websites, people hadn't heard of Google because they didn't exist. And it was a tough road to say to people, you really need a website? And people said, oh, no, that internet thing, that will never take off, will it? And now we're in the same thing going, you really should be in social media. They're going, oh, no, that's just put pictures of cats on, isn't it? So, it's a similar journey again now with social as it was to web design back in '99. But I've seen web design transform businesses, and now it is part of that mix, and keeping that consistency across all your digital media really does pay dividends, wherever they land, because you never know where they're going to land now. In the old days, it was homepage of my website is where they're going to come in my welcome door. Now there are so many places. It's a tweet, it's a post, it's a share on someone else's post, it's a tag. They land on a landing page, not your homepage. You have less control of where they're going to start finding you, and that's why you've got to keep that consistent.
The fundamentals still apply, though, Trevor.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have an unattractive, difficult to navigate website.
Precisely.
As good as whatever you're doing.
And I'm sure Trevor would agree with it. It's as I always say to people, gone are the days when websites originally were, they were just an online brochure for what you did. So you literally got your brochure that was in the office and says, okay, put all that information onto my website. That doesn't work anymore. And a lot of people have woken up to that now and now understand that, because people are viewing, you know, websites through their mobile phones, whether they're on the bus or whether they're on the train or whether, you know, they're on their breaks or whatever. That's where they use it. So it needs to be responsive. But as you say, Howard, the fundamentals need to be there. You know, if I'm going onto a website, I want to find that information. And if I'm being directed from a particular social media, you know, platform, and it's saying, you know, buy this nice jumper now, I want to go on and be directed directly to that jumper. I don't want to be directed to a home page, you know what I mean, where I have to go and find it, because I'm just going to say, oh, no, I don't need,
No.
I don't need the hassle of that. So, you know, landing pages can be extremely, extremely important. And to, you know, thinking that type of information, what it is, how I get it, how do I pay for it, they're all fundamental parts of, you know, your design of your website as well. And I'm sure, Trevor, you totally agree with.
Yeah, I mean, we can dig in another show a bit more detail, but I'm working on a site at the moment, and there is lots of code behind the scenes that you put in, so that when you put that URL into Facebook to share a post, it picks out the right picture, the right title, the right description that is appropriate for that page, rather than just some random picture that Facebook thinks it wants to put on. And there's a lot that's going on behind the scenes that you don't see when you just visit a website. But if you get it right, it means all that social sharing you're in control of. You're in control of which picture's picked up, what image you're putting out, and getting that all correct. So there is a lot to get it right, and a lot of people don't see all that detail. And it's back to the scissors, isn't it? Most people think scissors cut things, but you go to a hairdresser for far more than just the scissors. Well, not sure me and Howard, but you know.
I'm just there, guys. I'm just there.
You're getting there. You're getting there.
I'm hanging on for dear life, let's say.
Maybe we'll save that for another show.
Yes, exactly. Well, cutting my hair? No thanks.
Yeah,
anyway.
cutting your hair live on ESTV.
For charity.
So look, at the end of the day, guys, as I said, you know, this is ESTV, and we're always delighted to hear your comments. And if you have anything that you particularly want us to talk about, please do get in contact with us. You can tweet us at Effectifying SOC, or you can also follow, as I said, we're on Facebook. You can find us on Facebook at Effectifying Social. We're on Instagram at Effectifying Social. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Effectifying Social. Or if all else fails, you can go to our website. You can visit our website, which is effectifying.social. Okay, so I do hope you enjoyed the program, and our next one will be next week. So do join us, and if you, as I said, if you have any questions, please do get in contact with us. Trevor and Howard, thanks for your company tonight, and we'll see you guys very soon.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you. Bye bye.
Good night.